everybody, welcome to Survivor Now podcast. Hey, we got Randy Bruce out there on spring break this week, so it is me and the fabulous Tegwyth here to break down what has gone on with AU Survivor last week, everybody. You know what? These episodes have been really a lesson in how to conduct yourself in tribal council, how to play idols, how to communicate. You know what? I wish we could see more behind the edits, but it's been a great 3 days of just Survivor AU. What do you feel about it?
I mean, let me just say heartbroken is the first word I'm thinking because Shawnee, oh my God, that vote out. I'm literally tearing up. There are literally tears in my eyes just thinking about it because that vote out, Shawnee's vote out was just so gut wrenching for me personally. But let me just say, I think it's really good TV. Good TV always brings out different emotions, whether that's happiness, sadness, or anger, like I felt. And I definitely felt like that anger came out. But yeah, really interesting idol plays, really interesting. Just overall, everything was really great.
You know what? I'm enjoying watching everybody just be on the edge. I know we started off the season where the heroes were dominating. And now we see that as these tribes start to merge together into one tribe, really George is in command.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And well, if we start with the first episode of the week, Sam's vote out essentially,
Yeah.
that was full of, I thought, interesting kind of gameplay, but then also what Ryan, my boyfriend, described as the opposite Parvati, which was two idols were played incorrectly
Yeah.
out of three, which was so hard to watch because you had a 66% chance of getting it right, and it just ended up absolutely wrong, obviously. Not that I personally was rooting, like I've been personally rooting for the villains, specifically, Shawnee, Liz, and George were the people that I've really been rooting for. But I also love Nina. And so like Nina's my winner pick, and I wanted to see that go really well. But, obviously didn't.
You know what? And looking at let's go back to before the Sam's vote out for this week, and where Nina finds an idol. And I gotta admit, if you're going out there, you want to play the game of Survivor, it's on your bucket list. And you become so excited in that moment that you found an idol. Because if you look at it, it's wrapped in a brown piece of paper. It's not as easy as the edit make it look like, oh, she just walked up on it. Because we saw in previous episodes where multiple people have walked right by it. So she finds it and she's getting like twofold. She's getting to do something her mom never did. She found an idol. Two, she found an idol. And now you're saying, okay, how should she play it? Then we got Sean that finally admits that he has an idol. So now we got two idols going into tribal council, and we're back to the same target. Let's get out George.
Yeah, and it's like a broken record, literally. Like it's just the same thing over and over again. Let's get out George, let's get out George, and it never ends up working. And the fact that Haley even told people, this is what we're doing, and it ended up not being right. Now, nothing is ever clear cut in Survivor. So if I'm on that beach and someone comes up to me who I have not been working with, and they tell me, hey, it's this person, I'm probably going to take that with a grain of salt,
Yeah.
But then it's just, I've also never had an idol in my hands. You want to be safe. That idol is yours. You want to be safe. And so the fact that it was just it was brutal to watch. That episode I also was spoiled on, so I knew Sam was going home. And in my mind, I was like, there's no way. There's no way that they don't play an idol or that whatever it is. And or I was like, they either don't play any idols or, because there's no way that that ends up happening. But it was absolutely, it was wild.
I know we get the tribal council. We got Haley sitting at one end. We have Sean sitting at the other end. We got Sam, thinking he may know what's going to happen. And you have Nina with an idol that didn't need to be played. And it's like the dynamics of it. I think that the editing was great for that tribal council. I'm amazed at how many people just say, you know what, I'm just going to jump on and we're going to get George. They could have voted anybody else out. Anybody. They could have taken both idols and said, okay, we know you're targeting Sam because everybody knew that. and said, you
Mm-hmm.
know what? We want to get out a Shawnee. We want to get out of
Mm-hmm.
Liz, and we want people to vote for Sam,
Mm-hmm.
and gave Sam the idol. Because we see where
Mm-hmm.
Sean goes up there and he's like, hey, if I'm wrong, I'm gonna get you some beer. There is no
Yep.
beer in the world that tastes
I
that
know.
good than being there the next day. So
Accurate. 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 I said to Ryan when that happened, that better be some pretty expensive, really nice beer. But
I'm
there's
gonna need beer
nothing.
every week for at least a year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah. And, let's also talk about Simon in this episode because was this the episode, remind me, that he ended up switching? Did he switch his alliance or his allegiance that episode? Or am I jumping
No,
forward? I can't remember.
he was kind of left in the wind. They didn't really care about his vote either way it went because
Mm-hmm.
he'd already won immunity, and they kind of
Mm-hmm.
took him out the equation. That's why they had that
Mm-hmm.
swing vote in there, and Haley voted for George, and it
Yeah.
didn't work because they kind of letting Simon do his own thing because they already know that he's a double agent on both
Mm-hmm.
on whoever he's going to be picked up on.
Right.
The only monkey wrench that gets thrown in there is when he wins immunity, which he did. So
Twice.
now he's not a target because he would have been going
Mm-hmm.
home that night, but he won it. So I think that the way Simon is playing is almost like the way some of the players played in Survivor season 43. As
Mm-hmm.
long as you're winning and you can play an immunity out or something like that, you can survive.
Mm-hmm.
But as
Yeah.
Jesse found out, as soon as it was gone, you the next thing voted out.
Yeah. Absolutely. And he obviously it's very important to have for him specifically, but it's almost weird to me that it's so important for him to have that because if I'm playing and I don't know that I would want Simon out. I don't know that I would want, if I know that
That's a good
Simon
one.
is going to be like, he's always kind of unpredictable. Like, do I actually think if he makes it to the end that the jury is going to vote for him? All of this stuff. Yes, do I want him to go the whole way? No, but why I'm confused why he is the first target, why he's George's first target most of the time. It just doesn't really make sense to me, just because of how the whole season has been going so far.
I've asked out of the exit interviews we've done thus far, I've asked people to describe George in one word.
Hmm.
And I think the best description was passionate about playing the game. George is
Hmm.
there to embody the game of Survivor and play it. And I
Hmm.
think Simon became a real fixation with him, just as well as George is a fixation for him to get him out.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
they already know he's gonna flip on a vote. They already know that he's gonna try to take advantage of a situation. You know, and they know he's capable of winning back-to-back immunities now.
Hmm.
I think the one thing they're looking at is Simon just plays his game and George is playing his game. Now,
Hmm.
those two we can understand. The remaining tribe members that saying, is there a concern being sitting next to George at the end? We still have Nina, we
Hmm.
still have Haley in there. Now, which is kind of I think underplayed in the radar is Haley won her season.
Yeah.
Yeah, George came in second. Why is that a target on George's back when
Yeah.
Haley won? So that's kind of interesting.
And
We haven't
I
seen that
think
play
that
out.
Haley is doing absolutely. And I think Haley is doing a really good job at downplaying her threat level because she's going up to people and she's saying like, who is the biggest threat out here? And everybody answers George. And I think because of that, Haley's like downplaying her threat level when she is probably the most threatening person on that beach. She is the one that was able to convince the jury to give her the $500,000, sitting next to George. Now, obviously, George has corrected some of his mistakes and his gameplay has gotten better. But, I think that's why Haley is doing such a good job at like manipulating people and being like, George is the real problem. George is the problem, not me, not me, not me. And I think it is very, very, I think she's showing, some really good moves in this last couple of episodes.
Now, which brings us up to the vote out for Shawnee, that episode, where do you go with your gut when you feel something's wrong? Or you just keep going saying, hey, nothing's wrong. I'm overthinking it. Because George felt like
Mm.
there was a name change. You went from the Spice
Yeah.
Girls to the Shiz.
Yeah.
And
Well, that whole thing was so interesting to me because to me, shiz is a word. Like like it's like not a good like it's like oh that's like I don't know, it's like a slang word that I used to use when I was a kid. And if I walk up on somebody like talking about like oh we're the shiz, like I didn't even think that that was a combination of their names. It was so weird for me. I literally was like, why? How did they come up with that name? I'm so confused. Just pulling shiz out of nowhere. Obviously, this is very much a me thing, but if I were George, that would have gone right over my head. Like, I just thought they were talking about how they're so great or whatever. They're the shiz.
Again, we see where George stops on a dime and says, "Wait a minute, I'm no longer in the group of three anymore. I feel like I'm on the outs." Now, here's what's interesting. Survivor is an emotional game. It will always be an emotional game. Anybody that goes out there and say they're not going to be emotional, have you got to go see for yourself. And here's the reason why I say that. Her Shawnee and Liz's relationship has gone and will go beyond the game. And Liz is expressing that. And Shawnee is expressing that. But you're still there to play a game that says, I got to vote somebody out. And Shawnee would eventually voted George out. And that's the thing about it is it hurts inside the game, and sometimes it hurts outside the game. But you're gonna vote, you're gonna have to vote her out. And I think for a strategic move, I think it was great that George took that time and voted her out because you had to break them up eventually.
Absolutely. And, you know, as much as I hated that move just for television's sake and because I loved Shawnee so much, I think, you know, George, it was the right thing for George. I do think that, like, you know, it maybe makes Liz more of a, not like a Simon, but she's willing to do more things. She's not connected to one thing anymore. So it maybe makes her free to maybe go for George, maybe go for other people. You know, she's more free to do things now because George broke that up. And I personally think that it was a good move for George, but I also think it was slightly too early for George. I think he still has a solid three though with Maddie, Jerry, and himself.
Oh yeah.
So maybe I'll eat my words and George will go to the end, but something about it just seems a little too early in the whole, you know, in the whole jury process.
Well, we watched Shawnee. She exited with an idol in her pocket. She found another
Hmm.
idol. And for this season, up until that idol, she's had great idol play in her game. Uh,
Hmm.
and she took that idol out there because at that stage of the game, and we've heard it be repeated over and over again, you got to play. If you kind of coasted along up until this point, you got to play the game of Survivor. So we see where Shawnee walks out with her actual idol in her pocket. And I talked to her during the exit interview. I said, "Hey, are you gonna do like George? You gonna get a tattoo?" She said, "No, that got bad juju. It's not going anywhere." So now we're looking at it. It was like, okay, Shawnee's out the game. We got
Yeah.
Liz, which George comforts and says, "Hey, we're trying to do this next move." George doesn't become the target next. Even if
Yeah.
he votes Shawnee out, he doesn't become the target.
Yeah, and that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I think he maybe does become a target slightly more because I think in Haley's mind, George is now enemy number one,
Oh yeah,
not because of the
definitely.
Shawnee vote, but because it's now even if he's willing to cut his closest alliance, he's willing to cut anybody. You know what I mean? So I think in Haley's mind, he was up there, he was important to get, but now I think he's target number one on Haley. You know, we see her tell everybody that he won the $60,000. You know, she brought it in when
Yeah.
they were talking about Simon had the car, and that's great. And you know, George has his $60,000. It's important for you to know if you're voting for the person who is going to also get a million or $500,000. And I do think that like that's almost playing into George's hand because that's what George wanted to happen. Because if that
Yeah.
information got out, you know, he knows who it came from. But I think that Haley's going to be able. I think Haley's going to strike and get him out first,
You,
personally.
I'm not foreshadowing it, but it would be kind of interesting if it came back to Haley and George, the final two.
That would be wild. That would be
And
wild.
that would have never happened in no Survivor history where you had repeat ones and twos go back and compete against each other. Now we see where I got to go back to now we going up to with Sean.
Hmm.
Sean is on the chopping block. I mean, it's
Hmm.
going to either be Sean or Nina. Sean and Nina. So I like the fact that the challenge. One, I like the fact that Nina won a challenge and didn't sit out a challenge. She won a challenge. But I like the whole setup of the challenge. I don't think I've ever seen that particular challenge before. And by the time you get to where we at, we're almost at day 32. when your body gets to that day and you
Mhm.
feel that you feel that hunger, even though we seem like we see them eat great meals, it's not for TV. It's like it's every day. It's not. They're
Mhm.
actually eating beans
Mhm.
and rice. So to physically be able to go through that challenge and see Nina outlast Sean.
Mhm. I'm actually kind of shocked Sean made it so long because he's such a big guy, and it seemed like one of those challenges that being smaller might actually be better for you. But yeah, that challenge was brutal. I mean, everyone was just like their whole body was shaking. But I'm super happy that Nina like won. I'm super happy that the fact that she found an idol, and then in the same 3 episodes found or won an immunity was amazing. Was so good. Um, Now let's talk about the Sean Simon split. Um, I were you shocked about Sean actually going home because I was. I thought it was going to be Simon.
You know what? Survivor is
Oh,
so
can you hear me?
unpredictable. It's so
Mhm.
unpredictable, and it's been so unpredictable at Tribal Council this whole season. I look at it like it was a good. It should have been a good vote, and here's the reason why. I'm gonna go back to where George explained to him is for his size. There are going to be challenges where he just doesn't fit because of his size, where somebody else can have an advantage on him, which I thought was a good strategy to have put in there. But I truly thought Simon was going home. But guess what? Haley is currently the mastermind because she has plans because she knows she sits next to Simon right now. Everybody on the jury is going to look at Simon like you betrayed me in some way, some fashion, form or fashion, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to vote you for the 500,000. So it was a good play for the strategy for Haley, not a good play for strategy for George. And I think those
Mhm.
are the two people vying for positions right now that are really playing the game. Because if we look at Matt's game, he's kind of going along to get along.
Mhm.
Gary's game, Jerry's game, he's kind of going along to get along right now. And you at the stage of the game where you got to explain your game when it comes time to sit in
Mhm.
front of the jury. Nina, she's on the outskirts right now. She's either gonna have to
Oh
team up with
man.
somebody else, or she's definitely on the outskirts. She got to win another immunity. Um, who else is in the
I'm
mix?
I'm very nervous for Nina while we're talking about her. The fact that while George was leaving, he was like, Nina, it's Nina, it's Nina. We're going for Nina. Like, I think that it'll come out that obviously it wasn't Nina that did it. But will it, will people believe that? That's the question. Like, I think that's a very, and I don't know that Haley was even intending for that to happen, but like the fact that George now thinks it's Nina, I think it could be a bad omen for Nina's longevity. I'm worried that she could be not next, maybe, but maybe one right after that.
I think looking at the gameplay, just looking strictly on gameplay, I think George would look at it like, who's the bigger threat? Is Nina a bigger threat to your game, or is Haley a bigger threat to your game? Now, that is the way I would look at it if I had the wherewithal about myself in the game. You kind of forget all that stuff. That's why I said the returning players always had a better foot up on new players. So we can see how the returning players. So Nina's a new player because I wouldn't have played my idol when I already know one idol is all that needed to be played. So I would have kept that idol and she'd have had that one hidden. I wouldn't have told everybody I had an idol. I would have played just like Sean did. I would have kept that a hidden fact. So I think that if we look at it past the edits, I think George should look at it and say, hey, you know what? Haley is always going to be a bigger threat to me than Nina will. And you still have the unpredictable Simon, and he still has a core group of three. So I would think that based off of the previous tribal councils and the way things have panned out, that we're probably going to see where George says, you know what? Who's a bigger threat?
Yeah, and here's the thing. I feel like it's hard for me to not see George's way to the end. Like I see so many different paths for him to get to that final two. We're so small in numbers now. We're at like what, 7 people left, 8 people
Seven.
left, something like that.
It's
And it's just like, and you're telling me that like it has to be a group effort to get George out or a really amazing idol play. Something has to happen. And I think Jerry and Matt need to do something to they need to realize that they sit next to George in the end that that's how they have no chance because they just kind of are seen as follow him around. And so I think everybody out there has a reason to vote George out. I just don't know if it's going to happen. I feel like George is playing a very good social game, and he's also playing a very good strategic game. And I think that, it's a very good but deadly combination for everybody else out there. And I honestly don't see a way that he doesn't make it to final two almost.
Look, we got 30 plus days under our belt, and George is still there.
Mm-hmm.
30 plus days. Because
He
everybody,
was
I
the
think,
first target.
I think everybody thinks the same thing. I'm gonna go as far as I can take George, then I'm gonna vote him out. But you're not playing 4 steps ahead. He's already playing 4 steps ahead, saying, "Hey, I need to move this person out." So who's the only threat challenged left? Simon. He's truly the only one
Simon.
physical enough for his threat. Matt probably could depending on what the challenge is. If it's it depends on what the challenge is. But I think that Matt and Simon are the last two threat challenges, depending on what they are. I think if it comes down to a puzzle or something like that, everybody is it's open game. Everybody can win a puzzle. So it's gonna be kind of interesting to see how Sunday night's episode, what happens, who's gonna be the new target, what's gonna be the immunity challenges. That's gonna be the real key to see what's gonna happen. Now we also got another idols are back in play. Somebody finds an idol, guess what? Oh, we it's back on again. If Anina finds an idol, guess what? Now she's safe. She can make it past that vote. Haley finds an idol. Oh, well, she's safe. So it's become kind of interesting.
Yeah, and oh, I think if Haley finds an idol, Haley will be able to maneuver enough that she will be able to find a way to. Because I don't honestly don't think that Haley's name is going to be on the chopping block this coming week, or sorry, this coming episode. I think she's going to find a way to maneuver it to maybe make Nina to be the vote, or whomever. I don't know, but I feel like Haley is good enough in her manipulation and her words to kind of dodge that bullet. But I think that if Haley finds an idol, I think she might figure out a way to play it for somebody else in order to get George out and save somebody else and have this amazing big move
That's my
under her belt and
that's
be
my
able to, you know
plan.
what I mean?
That's my plan. Look, I think yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that Haley has come to a point in the game where I'm gonna go say it looks like she has more power than George has because she's taken shots at George for the past two tribals. They just haven't worked, and
Mm-hmm.
it's enough people that's there to kind of take the blame. We see Nina taking the blame. We see Simon taking the blame, where the blame is not falling at her foot. But I think where she tripped herself up at it when she told that George on the 60K. I think that was her. I think that was if a mistake had to be identified, I think that would have been a mistake. You should have just kept it to yourself on that one because now he knows you're the only person that told. And I think that's where Nina's going to get saved at. Where if Nina says, "Well, she told us that you got 60K," he's going to know that she's gunning for him, and he's going to turn his attention to her. And I think Simon might be the one to help him get out Haley.
Mm, that's a very good point. I think that's a very good point. I think that it might come back to bite her, but I don't know. I really feel like maybe it, the one thing about Australian Survivor that I find interesting is I feel like there are so many idols. I feel like there are
Oh,
so
this is
many
every day.
idols. I've lost count of how many idols that this show has in play at any one point, or how many idols they have hidden. It's just like I feel like we've gone through like 40 separate idols at this point. Um, but I do think that there is going to be an idol rehidden, and I feel like people will find like go and look for it. And I really do feel like Haley. I'm feeling in my gut that Haley will find it. And part of me thinks she'll save Nina with it. And but I do see Simon, trying to go where he thinks the majority is. Um, and, that's what he's been trying to do this whole time. It's worked for some of the times. It hasn't worked for some of the times. So I think that he'll, if he thinks it's going to be Haley, I think that, he and George will make it happen. But I think if Haley comes to him and it's like, it's George, I think Simon would be more than happy to write George down on a piece of parchment and send George home.
I think Simon will write anybody name down on the parchment. I think
True.
he's like, whatever, I'll
That's
just
true.
write anybody name down. I think we're gonna see where I think we're gonna see where oh, I think we're going to see where you're coming down to the end. You have
Mhm.
players just trying to survive to get to the last five or the last of the four position. I think that the core three of George, Matt, and Jerry are solid. I don't think either one. I don't think none of them are changing because now you're a voting block. You don't have to worry about anything. So once you get down there, it's like, okay, who has an idol? Which, you know what, you're right. I think the idol had his own segment on the council. Where's an idol at this week? So you got the idols. I think I love the fact that they're back in play and you got a chance. It gives you a chance. Editing seems like it takes a second to find an idol, but it does not. So I think anybody that goes out there and look for it, and I hope Nina's out there looking for it. I hope that really just Nina. Because you got Liz. I think Liz is the X Factor too. I think Liz is an X Factor. I think Liz is a free agent. I'm curious to see how long she's going to hold the baggage of Shawnee, or has Shawnee said, "Hey, play the game"? Because I think if she's sitting there, she's not a slam dunk at the end if she's sitting next to George, but I think she's a slam dunk with anybody else. I think she has a good chance.
I think she has a very good chance against a lot of people. And thank you for bringing Liz up because this is something that I wanted to talk about. I think Liz handled Shawnee's vote out beautifully.
Oh,
As a first time player, you lose somebody that close. I mean, they were inseparable. They were like this. They were like, they have a relationship. Um, I think that she did such a good, like I would have lost it if I were Liz and my Shawnee was voted out and George was out prancing in Shawnee's clothes. I think I would have lost my mind. I would have screamed. I would have been like, "How dare you do that to me?" All of this stuff, blah 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 blah. Liz played it cool, calm, and collected. She, was able to keep her very valid emotions in while everyone was watching. And then, she would go off to the side and feel very upset. I think that Liz just did so, so, so well, especially for being a first time player. I'm so impressed how she did that because I definitely could not have done that. And I just think that, I'm a huge fan of Liz and I do think that she has a very good chance against a lot of those people out there right now to win. And, Shawnee's going to be her advocate at the jury
oh
villa.
yeah, that's a vote for her.
Shawnee, I have to vote for her, and I think that Shawnee would be able to convince other people to vote for her too. So, yeah, I'm a huge Liz fan, and I think she's doing great stuff.
Now you gotta keep in mind now as we start to build the jury, when they go back to jury village, they're having multiple conversations. And that's why they say you got to manage the jury. So it's gonna be kind of interesting who's on the jury as well. But Liz, I mean, it is an emotional toll on you to be out there, especially they've already been out there a month plus, and you build strong relationships with somebody, and she comes back, and it's doing her confessional. It's obvious that she's hurt by this vote out. Um, but on the game side, I'll be like, you go get vote out. Somebody go vote somebody else out too. So I like to see the gameplay, but I also understand the
Mhm.
emotional side of it, having to lose somebody that you've been with for that amount of time. That's a long time to be out there just 24/7, talking to the same people, being around the same people, and finding somebody that you kind of click with that can make you laugh. Because when I was talking to Shawnee doing the exit interviews, I said, "Hey, tell me about the stuff that didn't get picked up by the edits." And she was like, "Yeah, the Joker, how much fun they was having, how much jokes they were telling, how much of a good time that didn't get put on TV." And that's what we see when we see Leah's come back and her friend has now been voted off. But she still let her play a game. And I think she masterfully handled her emotions and dealing with George, not going off when he came there and try to comfort her. And let's take it. Going the next vote, guess what? She voted with everybody else. She didn't vote against the grain. That's hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very emotional game. It's a very, it's not like playing Monopoly, right? And even
I see some people
honestly,
fighting
and
Monopoly too.
I was gonna say, Monopoly. Think about what happens when your person plays Monopoly and you get mad and you get like whatever. This is like that times 1,000.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I just
You see that guy right there? Where's Xander at? Where that guy
I
right
see
there?
him.
Yeah, Xander voted me out. And I mean, you still remember that stuff, and it's a baggage that you carry with you. One thing with Shawnee has played the game more than anybody in Survivor history for AU. Anybody. I mean, she's been out there, she's been playing. I'm great. It's great to see Liz out there and getting as far as she can. Also, we only have two two people that are not returnees. Did Matt play before?
Matt,
No, Matt hadn't played
Matt,
before.
Jerry, and no, Matt hasn't played before.
No, so
It's
Matt,
Matt, Jerry, and Liz
I thought
are the
Jerry
only
played.
non-returnees left.
Yeah, so to have non-returnees back and playing alongside, we're gonna call them veteran players because they're playing a masterful game of Survivor. Nina's a returnee too, so she gets no credit not being a returnee. So she's back to play, and she's gone deeper than she did the first time. She got, if you don't know, she got put out due to injury. So she's playing a game better than she played before. I think there's some things that when you're in that game, you got to look at. Like Simon always seemed like he's so grateful to get to the next stage of the game because he's never been there. And I think that's where Nina falls at. She's grateful to be to the next stage of the game, but she's never been there. Where George and Haley, they're playing a game because they know what it looks like when you get there. So when it gets down, we're going to see some fireworks in these next 3 episodes because that's going to be the setup to determine who basically is going to win $500,000. We're going to see what's going to happen. And I don't know about you, Tegwyth, but I've been enjoying these tribal councils. And Randy will tell you I do not like the food because I'm like, look, y'all enjoying y'all food too much. I don't want to see crab on the table. Um, and I know for those that don't understand the AU Survivor thing, they have to give them a certain amount of food. US, they give you a fishing kit. Just want to say that, but I,
Yeah, very different.
I thoroughly enjoyed how they just kind of we see in all aspect of it. We see in Liz, we see in George, we see in Matt. Matt done got a little sassy now. He be a little sassy these days because he'd be like, "Nah, I'm on the right ship."
Yes, he is. And let me just say, I think Jerry is honestly, while I did say earlier that Jerry and Matt are kind of like George's lackeys, which they are, I think Jerry holds a little bit more power than Matt does because we saw in the Shawnee vote that George went directly to Jerry first before anybody else. Jerry said, "Hold off. No, no, I don't think it's the right time." Obviously, George wanted to get Shawnee out, so
Oh
he
yeah,
asked his opinion, ignored it, and then found an opinion that he wanted to hear, aka Haley's, and then went for it, right? But Jerry is always George's first stop, always. And I think that I would be interested to see how Jerry will play if George gets voted out. I would be interested to see if he's able to hold his own, if he's able to make a move. But I think that it's very interesting that Jerry is that first stop for George, almost always.
I think one thing is we got to remember that the heroes created Jerry. So I'm happy with Jerry's gameplay up until now because the heroes created him. Matt, I'm impressed with when Matt decided that, hey, you got to get on the right side. And he made a decision. A lot of people wait either too late to make a decision to jump ship or they make a decision that they think is a good move and it comes back and it's not. So it's kind of interesting to see that the heroes initially sent Jerry over to the villains tribe. And it's no surprise that now he's working with the villains or what's left of the villains tribe. So that was your own worst creation. I think Jerry was always going to be a good guy and always going to be with that group. But that group really pretty much dogged him and said, hey, if you come back, you come back.
Yeah, that whole thing really signed the villain or the hero's fate with Jerry. I feel like,
Oh, yeah.
Jerry was gonna group up with the villains anytime he could. I and I think it's interesting that there's, I mean, he's still there, and I think that relationship that George has with Jerry is very interesting, and that they're really sticking together. I think in a world in which the final three is Jerry, George, and Matt, I think that Jerry and Matt are going to try to find a way to vote out George.
I would. I
Yeah.
mean, you're in a position to. And here's the thing about it is Jerry is from an older cloth. He might just be loyal to the end. He might be a survivor player that says, hey, we're going to stick together to the end because don't forget, Matt goes to Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
George may go to Jerry first, but Matt comes to him and say, okay, they have a connection. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did vote him out, but I also wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
surprised if Jerry said, I'm loyal to George and I'm gonna keep with him. He got me
Mm-hmm.
this far. I said I'll be with him to the end, and he fulfilled his promise. Because here's the thing about George, he gonna tell you the truth. It's not like he's lying. He's like, this is what's gonna happen. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately to the gameplay of the rest of people, it's happening as he's plotting it out here. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we're gonna have an exciting week coming up, and I'm
I know.
looking forward to seeing one. I want to see who gets out on Sunday. I got to know who gets out on Sunday because that's going to determine a lot of the pathways to the victory.
Who do you
Whoever
think
gets
it'll
voted out
be?
Sunday. Let's go with who I don't want it to be on
Okay.
Sunday. I don't want it to be Nina on Sunday.
I
I
don't think it'll be Nina on Sunday.
I
I
do.
think that well, who do you do want it to be?
I wanted to be. Oh, Simon, you ain't a Simon. You my guy too. Here's because Simon's playing. He's playing a game. He's winning challenges. He's playing a game. Here's the thing about it is I think people forget this: outwit, outplay, outlast. They are three distinctly different things, and Simon is doing two and a half of them. He's a two and a half guy right now, and I like his
Mm-hmm.
game. He's playing, but if I got to vote somebody out, it's going to be Simon, or I would target a Matt, a blind side of Matt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel like now that Haley's pretty much turned on the other group, I think that Haley's going to figure out a way to get out George. I feel like it might be a George vote on Sunday. Um, it might backfire and get Haley out. No, I'm sorry, it might backfire and get Nina out.
Oh
But I
yeah.
really don't think Nina is going to go out. I think it's going to be either. I think it's either George or Matt. I'm not going to lie.
You know what? Here's another twist. I think somebody's going to find an idol and play it correctly, and the
Hmm.
person that they wanted to vote out is not going to be voted out. Somebody else is going to be voted out. I would not be surprised if Haley gets voted out.
Mm,
I would. I wouldn't. I
interesting.
wouldn't be surprised because I mean, who hasn't except for Sean just got voted out on just Haley wanted him out because she thought
Yep.
Simon would be a better person to sit next to her. But here's the thing about tribal councils. George has always say, if you're not putting yourself in a position now or don't know who you want to sit next to, you're not playing the game. And he's
Hmm.
absolutely correct.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously every single person out there would be naive not to be thinking about final two. They'd be naive. So I'm also interested to see what if we have a couple non-vote outs? You know what I mean?
Oh, look, twist at the end.
AU Survivor loves to do that. I feel like we might have one of those this week, at least one, or maybe even two. I don't know, because I do feel like that we haven't had one in a while, and AU Survivor loves to do that. So I think that that's definitely in the books for this week,
Look,
maybe.
I would because we had one in the last season. It was a twist at the end. You
Mm-hmm.
know what? I would love to see a twist where two of the players go off somewhere else and then they
Mm-hmm.
come back and they compete in a challenge. And I think last season it was four of them.
It
Four of
was
them went off. It was a three. It was Shawnee. It was
it
not
was
Shawnee.
Jordy, it was Jordy, it was Shay, it was Mel, I think, and I think there was one other person.
Oh, she's not from Austin, but she wore a lot of Austin t-shirts.
Yes.
I can't remember her name offhand. But yeah, and
KT. KT?
yeah, but only two of them got to stay.
Yeah, I think it was Shay and Jordy, and then Shay ended up obviously going to the final. Spoiler alert, final two.
Yeah. So you know what? If they have that twist, I would love that'd be a great twist because now you have a group that can come together and say, okay, what are we going to come back and do? So, hey, for everybody out there, if you're not tuning in to AU Survivor, it is a firestorm out there of just good Survivor content.
Hmm.
Take your time. Look, Tegwyth, next week, it's going to be fire.
I know.
Hey,
I'm so excited.
before we wrap up, you got anything else?
I just want to say we saw two of my nightmare challenges this week. And literally, I talk about they are the challenges that I would throw things, and they are the spelling block balancing things. It's a nightmare situation. I have dyslexia, and I would get frustrated so fast because I would flip something upside down or missing whatever it is, it just spells frustration to me and it's a nightmare. Second one is the flu. I would probably, and so props to Simon for winning both of my nightmare challenges. But yes, we saw my two of my nightmare challenges in 1 week. So that is,
That let me
I
tell you
hated it. I
something.
hated watching. I got frustrated watching it.
The balance challenge, those balance challenges are so tedious and you're trying to Simon executed everything. You know what? He stayed really patient. really patient. And I watched Sean drop them blocks off there, and I was like, I'd have gave up. I just said, you know what, somebody else is going to win this one. But it's one of those things you got to be really patient. I'm gonna need somebody to have the words in the background, so I don't have to try to look for them. Because when they put the word verse in there, I was like, man, I ain't think about that. And I was like, why is a V going there? I'm spelling out a different word anyway. So, but it was
Exactly.
I love it. I love the challenges. I love the physicality of some of the challenges, but I just love the way they kind of have their challenges. They make you want to go out there and play some of them. Now, the one they sat in the chair, no, I'm good. I'm good with that one. I don't.
That was brutal to watch.
That late in the game, endurance is not something that's going to be a lot of people's strong suit. I will like to give a shout out to Jerry because he did outlast 3 or 4 castaways before he dropped out. So, and again, I think the challenges is almost like the third player.
He was there pretty long.
Yeah, because we only see the TV version. So I think they done the no, they've already done the water challenge. They did that. That's how Flick got put out.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, that water challenge.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that one's hard.
For everybody out there, thank you for tuning in. Look for us on YouTube. Look for us on Spotify. Here's another wrap up for this week of Survivor Now podcast, wrapping up AU Survivor. Thanks, everybody.